Like, how can I sustain this for the long term? I feel horrible all the time, like a walking zombie. I hate my body, I hate myself, and I just don't want to live in the gym and eat nothing. Welcome to Sips and Sets. I'm your host, Silic, and this podcast is all about combining the energy of your morning coffee with the determination you put into living your best life. Sips and Sets is here to inspire you to tackle life head on, one sip and one set at a time. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the 7 things I wish I personally knew before I started my health and fitness journey. They definitely would have been very, very helpful to know back then, but obviously we have to learn things the hard way sometimes. So I really want to share that with you guys to really help some of you who are starting out, or maybe you're closer to the beginning of that journey or have made some mistakes along the way, to really maybe take a different turn and not make some of the mistakes I made. But before we dive in, I really want to get you guys started with a bit of context to how I began my journey. It's a little bit different to a lot of other people, and it was definitely well before Instagram was there and we had TikTok and all of those things. So it felt like a very, very different world in fitness when I started. I think when I first started in exercise and just wanting to be kind of healthy in general, I actually danced for 20 years of my life. Yes, 20 years of my life spent dancing, which was like ballet, jazz, contemporary, acrobatics, like you name it. I went to a dancing academy towards like the end of that part of my career with dance. And I really fell in love with fitness. I always tried to keep fit during dancing, but I even noticed then like it started with extremes. It was always about how you looked coming from the dancing world. It was very much be smaller. I was cheerleading for the NBL. It was very much everything had to do with like you looking petite, fit, tiny as much as possible, or you wouldn't get booked for the gigs. So I think for me, feeling like I had to always be in a smaller body started at a very, very young age. And, you know, even growing up at the time with all of those fitness magazines and those home, I remember my mom having those like home workout videos that you would follow along. I remember Cher being on one of them and constantly wanting to do those like with my mom, and just always feeling like I had to be on some kind of diet from seeing it from magazines or the news or like my mum following those things back in the day, you know. So I already had that perception of myself. I think the earliest memory I have of wanting to be in a smaller body was 12 years old, and I was tiny back then, which is crazy. So that kind of stemmed, you know, always wanting to be kind of smaller from a very young age. And then getting into fitness, I remember seeing my very first fitness competition where a friend of mine was competing, and she like looked phenomenal. She ended up winning the whole show. It was like she was in the bikini division, and I thought, wow, I would love to do that. Like I grew up performing, dancing, you know, you perform all the time. So I was like, this looks amazing, and it's going to get me that body that I really, really kind of want, you know. And so I did that. I actually left the dancing world and this was, oh gosh, about 2010, 2011. And I decided to enter my first fitness competition. And back then there was like not a huge amount of coaches to choose from. It was more about who was running the bikini shows like in your city, in your town. So they were typically the person that would prep you also for the show. So I did that, and I started with, you know, those 6 meals a day, very strict. This is exactly what you eat. Don't deviate from the plan type of meal plan. And training was crazy extreme. It was 2 times a day, maybe 3 times a day leading up to the show, of cardio every single morning, 7 days a week, and lifting, like resistance training, 5 days a week or 6 days depending on the week. And you eating like these tiny little meals of fish, chicken, rice, broccoli, asparagus, like gross. I think about it now and I just think, oh my gosh, I could not eat meals like that anymore. Like no dairy whatsoever. So I drank my coffee black, which there's nothing wrong with that. I just can't do that anymore now. I'm like, give me all the milk and give me the cream and make it taste really good. So I started doing that, and I won my first show, which was amazing at the time because I really didn't think I would. And that kind of spiraled this, oh wow, like how far can I take this? And I did that for 2 years. And in that time, I had a very, very fast tracked, I guess, fitness career. Like everything escalated really, really quickly, from being the face of brands to being endorsed to being sponsored, and then winning show after show after show locally, then getting sent overseas to compete and represent brands and doing all this stuff. It was wild. And being on the cover of Oxygen magazine, and I remember working with like Adidas in Austria. It was just like wild at the time, being like this, I guess, one of the it people for the bikini division in Australia when it first started. So that in itself, like, created a lot of pressure and unhealthy, I guess, tendencies to want to maintain that physique all the time. So already the contest prep was such an extreme thing, and it just kept getting more and more extreme and unhealthier as I went on. And I had different coaches. I remember having like a US based coach that coached bikini girls specifically. They were like a big team. And again, it was very much like, this is exactly your plan, do not deviate. And I started building a very, very, very negative relationship with food, because if anything deviated from my meal plan, if I had to go and eat out anywhere, God forbid, at the time, I would freak out. I was like, I can't eat anything that's not on my meal plan. I can't eat anything I haven't made myself, because I don't know what's in it. So that anxiety around food like crept up like crazy. It was just unbelievable, the anxiety I would feel going to eat out or go on a vacation somewhere, or not be in control of my food. And then skipping training sessions was just not a thing. I would train as much as I had to get the result I needed to get. And if you weren't on track to how you were meant to be looking, like during your prep, the coach would definitely tell you and be like, you're looking fatter than you should be. Like, those words were thrown around like so loosely. And when you were to get checked, you would get pinched. And I remember getting pinched like every spot in your body to check like how much body fat you had in those areas. So you just started to, they started to treat your body like a object. Like, it was very objectified, and it was very like neutralized. It was just like, this is a canvas almost. And you start to treat yourself that way too. So it just became very extreme in every single way possible of, okay, the food is extreme, the training's extreme, there's no life balance, there's no downtime, there's no rest. And then on top of that, you're getting nitpicked about every little part of your body, not just by your coaches, but then when you do compete, you're getting judged on your body. And when you get negative feedback in any way, shape, or form from anybody, it just makes you feel so low when it comes to your self-worth, and all of your worth starts to become tied to how your body looks. So it's just such a terrible mentality. Like, this was like, this snowballed, into such an unhealthy relationship with not just food, but myself. You just don't see yourself like other people see you. And then that pressure of being kind of in that spotlight was crazy. So when I did have an off season, and back then it was on season, off season. You're either prepping or you're not. And there was no kind of balance to maintain like a healthy body. It was just, I used to balloon and gain so much weight really, really quickly every time, because I just didn't know how to eat normally. Like, I didn't know that anymore. No one had taught me. It's like, here's your plan, compete, great, you won, see you later till next season or the next show. So where that became an issue was, one, I just felt horrible when I gained any weight at all. Like, I had no one there to support me through that, or how to come out of that in a healthy way, and how to kind of live life normally. There was no normal anymore. Like, what was even normal? And then what that became was, okay, I need to pick the next show, and it wasn't because, okay, I love competing. It was more so, I reflect back and think, I really kept wanting to do the next show and the next show, because one, I was pretty competitive, but two, you start to see that, it was like a good excuse to be lean, a good excuse to get leaner. So then there was that. So it's just this vicious cycle. And then I found out I lost my period for 2 years, and health kind of took a big toll. My health took a massive toll, and my body just started to kind of work against me. And I was at a point where I just found it harder and harder and harder to get lean, and then I had to take things to more extreme to get lean. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, if I have to maintain this to be successful with this as a career, because I wanted to go to the Olympia. That was my dream at the time, which is like the Olympics of bodybuilding, like that's what that was. And I just thought, if I have to keep doing this way, I don't want it. I don't want to. I'm out. Like, how can I sustain this for the long term? I feel horrible all the time, like a walking zombie. I hate my body. I hate myself. And I just don't want to live in the gym and eat nothing. Like, I felt horrendous. I think at one point I was eating like 1,100 calories a day, like for contest prep, and then didn't know how to deviate from that. So I lost my period for 2 years, and then I was trying to search for answers, and I kept seeing doctor after doctor after doctor to find out, like, why is my period gone? This is before I knew anything about my body and how it worked and how things worked. I literally thought I was invincible. And then things start to stop working, and you realize very, very quickly, okay, no, I'm not invincible. This is not not happening. So, and then the doctors would just tell me, all right, we'll just stop training and whatever, and you should get it back. And to me at that time was so unhelpful, because I just thought, well, I can't, like, it's part of my job. Like, I need someone to help me. I finally found a endocrinologist. She was wonderful, and she did all my blood work. She said, we're going to figure out what's really going on, and we got all of my results back. And I remember sitting in her office. She knew what my lifestyle was like. She obviously knew my blood work. She knew what I was doing, and she said, Nina, let me ask you a question. I thought, okay. I think I was like, by this time, about 24, 25 years old. I'd already been competing for a few years and just was trying to figure things out. She said, do you want to have children in the future? And I thought, wow, like, what a question. I've never really thought about it. I don't know. I don't have a yes or no to that, but I think I'd like to have the option if it presented itself to decide, right? And she said, well, if we don't make some serious changes now, like, I have your blood work, things are terrible. Okay, no surprise there. But you need to start with changing your lifestyle if you want to actually have that as a possibility in the future. And to be in your mid-20s and to hear that, it's like, wow, okay, I am doing some damage here to myself and to my body. What things need to change. So from there, like, my journey really became about healing myself, healing my health, like getting that back. Because I thought, wow, I'm not invincible. My health has taken a big downward spiral with this. This is not sustainable. And I can't be trying to chase being super lean all the time, because it's ruining my ability to have a family, have a future, have a life, outside of what I'm doing. And that just really hit home, because I never really thought about it that way. I'd always just focused on my aesthetics from day one. It's just how we look at any means, by any cost to get there. So that's when I really started to think, okay, like, my thyroid was a mess, my sex hormones were a mess. Like everything, and I gained a whole bunch of weight at the time, because my body just couldn't handle trying to eat normally. I didn't have a normal relationship with food, and it was horrendous. So that's when my healing journey started, to healing myself, my relationship with food, myself, and trying to create more of a balance and a lifestyle. So I did that, which was wonderful. But it's taken, I think now, where are we at? That was started 2011, 2010. So this is 2024. It's taken that long to kind of figure all of that out. And that's why I became so passionate about helping other women with their health and fitness journey, so they don't have to make the same mistakes I did. And granted, that was such an extreme situation I went through. But I see it all the time now, where women just are trying to lose weight at any cost. Quick fixes, extreme things, and it's just that yo-yo dieting cycle. And I see so much of myself in them. And now too, being a mother of 2 girls, ages 2 and 5, I don't want them to ever feel like their worth comes from what their body looks like. They are so much more than their body. I just want them to feel their best. So having that front of mind now too, as a mom, it's like, I just don't want anyone else to feel how I felt. I had no support at the time, and I had to kind of figure it all out myself, and it took years. So if I had just known a few key things when I started, it would have made all the difference. If we had Instagram and the sustainable coaches, like, really preaching what they believe now, and the science and everything that we have access to now, I just think it would have made a world of difference. However, now what's really challenging is, we have this world of the internet with so many people saying so much crazy information. It's like, well, what's going to work for me? And that's the big difference. So I do have a few key things that I personally, it was hard to pick 7, that I think would be super, super valuable for anyone starting their fitness journey, to not make those detrimental mistakes that could have more of an effect on you negatively than you might realize. So let's talk about those 7 things. Hopefully this helps some of you guys like not make some of the mistakes that I personally made. So the first one is, and this is like, we hear this all the time, but number 1 is consistency is key. And it is. It's about being consistent. It's not about being, I'm 100% on like for this month and then I'm off completely. It really is building that consistency up, and showing up consistently to any capacity that you have is actually good enough, and that's going to yield you results long term, right? I didn't do that. I was like, I'm on for this amount and then I'm off. If I had just stayed kind of like somewhere in there consistently, I would have been much happier, much healthier. I would have been able to keep a lot of my results somewhat, rather than trying to just be on again, off again. And even though a lot of you guys, you're not doing contest prep, and I'm not in that world anymore, but a lot of you guys are doing, you know, I'm 100% on this diet for the next 4 weeks, and then you fall off again and gain all the weight back and you wonder why. It's like, well, you're not building consistency, or you might work out this week and not for 3 weeks and then again, and it's just inconsistent. So it really is about building that foundation of consistency to help you keep that momentum going. Like that's really, really, really the key. So I wish I had known that, and then that was an important factor to keep this going sustainably instead of having to go through everything I went through. Number 2, this one is like, this is the boring one, the basic one that everyone's like, oh, this stuff doesn't matter, when it really does. I would highly recommend you start with sustainable habits. Oh, we're like, what even is that? So sustainable habits, like rather than going to extreme things like crazy diets, crazy workouts, you want to build habits. They are the absolute key to lasting change. So what could that look like? All right, focusing on getting enough water in and practicing that until that becomes easy. Focusing on getting enough sleep and practicing that until that becomes easy. Granted, I'm a mum of 2 little kids. It's not always easy to do that, so I get it. Or it might be learning how to eat enough protein. Like, how does that look? So really putting these foundational habits in place. And that is going to drive you forward like you have no idea. Like, those are the boring basic things that people don't think are going to do anything. But I promise you, if you zone in on those habits, they're going to be there when you are having a bad day. It's like, well, it's a habit. I'm still doing the water when I'm having a bad day. I'm still doing at least 2 workouts a week when I'm having a bad day or having a bad week. Like, they're going to drive you forward. And again, one thing I really, really realized was that health and fitness and longevity with your health and fitness is about building momentum, creating momentum and keeping that momentum going. It might be fast sometimes, it might be slow, but we want to keep that moving forward. So creating those habits of that foundation, that powerhouse to building that momentum and continuing on with that momentum and keeping it going forward rather than kind of stopping, starting. Number 3, celebrating non-scale victories. Oh my gosh, this one is huge. So I remember everything was always tied to the scale. I didn't look at anything else. It was just that number on the scale that mattered. And I would judge my progress based on whether that number on the scale had gone down or gone up or not moved. And that would change my mood, change how I felt about myself, change how I approached my workout that week. It would make me do extra workouts when I didn't even need to. It was wild, the extreme things I would go to if that number on the scale didn't reflect what I wanted it to reflect, right? Whereas if you just focus on the non-scale victories, because the scale is just one metric that we use as a tool to measure progress, non-scale victories are going to get you so far. So this could be something as simple as, oh, I didn't overeat on any of my meals this week, whereas I used to. That's huge. Or I hit my water goal this week. That's amazing. You know, it could be anything along those lines. It could even be as simple as, oh, I hit a PR in the gym this week. Like, all of those small things that you might think are insignificant are huge for the future of your progress. If you keep focusing on those non-scale victories, like, I look back, I had so many non-scale victories. So many. And it honestly wasn't until I started doing more performance-based sports and metrics. Like, I did martial arts for a while and I was focusing on like getting much stronger. So sprinkling some of those things in, even in that point of my journey where I was like at my extreme lowest, helped so much. So really focus on those non-scale victories and make sure you write them down every week and really reflect on what those are. Number 4, progress takes time. Oh, I used to think my My progress, the weight I wanted to lose was a 12-week thing. Always 12 weeks and then I'm off. 12 weeks and I'm off. No. Sustainable progress takes time, and you have to be okay with that. You have to set that expectation that there are going to be ups and downs. Things aren't always going to be perfect, and it is going to take probably much longer than you think to make the process sustainable. And it's just not a race. Like, you don't have to compare yourself to anybody's pace or where you were a few years ago. It's like, go at your own pace where you're comfortable, but as long as you're moving forward and the momentum is going, that's all that matters. Number 5, mindset is everything. Oh, isn't it? Like, you could be having such a down day and being like, I'm not making any progress, I suck. Whereas it's like, hang on, and this is where those non-scale victories come in. It's like, hang on, I just have to do these small things, or I did those small things. Like, mindset is everything. It can propel you forward, or it can really hold you back. So really cultivating that positive, resilient mindset is really essential for overcoming those challenges, and rather than focusing on the negative things. So it'll help you stay committed to your goals in the long term. Number 6, rest and recovery need to be a non-negotiable. Oh my gosh, back in the day, I was like, what even is rest? What even is recovery? I would just go. And believe me when I tell you, I burnt out. My body burnt out, my body shut down, my hormones were a mess. It was unbelievable. I didn't rest. I didn't give myself that grace to rest. Your bodies need rest. Your muscle needs rest to repair and grow. For our overall well-being, for our performance, we need time to repair and rejuvenate from our training. And it's just as important. A lot of you have a hard time with resting or having rest days, but I would argue that rest days become even more important sometimes, because that's going to give you that repair to growth, that muscle, help you lose body fat. Like, it's so important to have rest and recovery, and not just for our bodies, but for our mental health too. We need to have days where we slow down, where we're not going a million miles an hour and doing a million steps on rest days, right? You can do active recovery, sure, but our bodies need time to rest and recover, and that's the key to that longevity with our health and fitness as well. And number 7, oh man, this one hits hard. This one is probably my favorite. I wish I had knew since day one. Comparison is the theft of joy, and isn't that the truth? Comparison to other people when I was doing the shows, comparison to myself with other people in the fitness industry, comparison on social media, especially when Instagram came out, and even today with Instagram, right? Comparing where you are in your journey to someone else, especially if you're at the start of your journey and they've been doing it for 5-10 years, right? It's going to suck the joy out of your soul. It's going to suck the joy out of the entire process. You are so unique. Just because Susie lost 10 pounds in the last 12 weeks, don't compare yourself to that. You don't even know what process she took. You don't even know if it was healthy. You don't know if it would be applicable to your life. You don't know if you'd be happy doing that. Focus on your own progress, your wins, celebrate your achievements, and just compare your right now to where you were a year ago or 6 months ago or 3 months ago. That's the only person you need to compare yourself to is where you were. Are you moving forward? Are you progressing? If you haven't been, then you might need to change some things so that you do make changes moving forward and you do progress, right? I promise you, if you start scrolling through Instagram and you're comparing yourself and your journey to someone else's who's been doing it for 10 years, you're going to feel so terrible about yourself, and you're going to think, what's the point? Why am I even doing this? Why do I even try? Why do I even bother? You're going to give up. You're going to be so down on yourself. So if you are doing that, you need to do an audit. That's a whole other conversation. But stop comparing yourself to other people and where they are in the process. Just focus on your process and your goals and whether you're moving forward. That's it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that this helps some of you out there, especially if you are in the early stages of your fitness journey, to kind of reflect, reassess a little bit and put some of these things in place so that you can have a much smoother, more sustainable journey moving forward.